I'll sign it later. She didn't sign it. The next day, I told her the teacher said I've got to. She signed it, and she said, from now on, when you get the report card, put it in your desk. Then you won't have to worry about it. She said, you sign it. So, up until I graduated high school, I signed my report card, and it was accepted. And nobody questioned the fact that the penmanship got better as time went on. And that's how life was back then. They gave the children a lot of responsibility. The children were outdoors all the time. There weren't very many cars, so we played in the street. And so that's how life was. And then as time, I went to nursing school, but I'll get back to that. But when I was young, my father had a band, and we had a wonderful time. They practiced in our house, and so every Easter my mother had to get a new linoleum because the kids came in and we all danced, and if you know the Polish polka, that's kind of hard on the linoleum. But this is a picture of my father and his band. There are 5 of them. And sometime later you might be able to look at that. And this is in Pelham. If you know where St. Caspar Cemetery is, it's just before you get to the Stone Crusher, that road, Hope and Rock Road. And there was a building there, and they used to have wonderful picnics, Polish food, the band playing, and then years later, some of the kids in Pelham burned the building down. But thankfully, I have a picture of the children plus the pastor, and they're doing the Polish polka. Now, as time went on, following World War II, Poland was devastated. And my mother got a lot of requests for clothing, food, and so she assigned me a cousin who had 2 little girls, and her house had been burned down. So, between my mother and me, we sent money, and they rebuilt their home. And then, for years, I was sending clothing because they couldn't afford to buy clothes. And this picture is my cousin, the one that was assigned to me, and all the packages I used to send. I sent 7 big packages in the spring, and this is my mother's family. This is my father's family. And when you look at that one, most of the clothes, even my cousin and her husband, have clothes from the United States. And this, would you open this up, Jim? I still hear from them. I put phones in for them, so I talk to them. And let's see, this is a birthday card that was sent to me for my last birthday. Beautiful. Well, I think you all have heard of John Oganowski. He was the American airline pilot whose plane was hijacked, and he hit the tower in New York. I think that was in 2001. In 2003, I got this beautiful letter from the Oganowski family. It was an invitation to a big celebration plus a dinner, and it was on September 14th, 2003. It was from 12 to 4. Well, I got there, and I guess I was kind of early, and Jim Okanowski took me for a ride all around on the farm on a tractor. And then we stopped, and they had a huge, the pig was that long, and it was on a rotisserie. And I said, I'd love to have my picture taken near the pig. And there was a young man, tending to it. And he said, well, give me your camera, and I'll take a picture of you and Jim. So there's me and Jim. A few years later, I can't remember when, I was at an affair at Dom Polski, that's the Polish Hall, and Jim came in, and when he saw me, he remembered my name was Helen, and he came over and he said, well, I'm running for a senator in Massachusetts. And he said, I'm sure I can count on you. And I said, Jim, I'm sorry, I won't be able to vote for you. He said, what? Yeah. I said, I live in Pelham, New Hampshire. Well, he gave me a nice hug. He said, I'm sure you would have voted for me if you were in Massachusetts. So that's a little of my history in that neck of the woods. John's story. Well, I put down some people who have touched my life. Billy Sullivan, the founder of the Patriots. I think it was in 1935. I graduated high school in 1934. In 1935, my girlfriend Blanche and I, we were working, and both of us decided we'd like to go horseback riding. And so we went to a leather goods store, got the Georges, the whole 9 yards, even a hat was a feather. And we took the bus to Middlesex Village in Lowell, and there was a fellow by the name of Eddie Gaudet who rented horses. And when we got there, we got off the bus, crossed the street, and the barn door opened. Well, who was coming out? Billy Sullivan and his best friend, Bud McQuaid. They both knew Blanche and I because we were in high school with them. And so they said, well, Billy said, I didn't know you go horseback riding. And I said, we've never been on a horse before. And he said, oh, he said, well, we'll cross the street to Hadley Park and we'll wait for you. So we went and got our horse, and Eddie Gaudet, who owned the barn and the horses, helped us get on the horse, and we crossed the street. And now Billy Sullivan said, put your feet in the stirrups. And so we did. And he took me first, and he said, now watch what I do. He said, it's a 1, 2, up, down. He said, if you don't put your fanny up, you're gonna regret it. So I watched him, and it was 1, 2, up, down, 1, 2, up, down. So he watched me go in the park there, and then he went and instructed Blanche. Thankfully, we went through a bridle trail in Lowell, and then into Chelmsford, and all the way to Westford and back. And we did that every Saturday, the summer of 1935, and there wasn't a single Saturday that it rained. So that is my claim to fame with Billy Sullivan. The man that I married, he and Billy Sullivan were on the Lowell High School football team. And then, I think maybe I'll better show you. This is a picture of my husband and me. He was a flight instructor in World War II. And that's Karen and Beverly. She was 2, and Beverly, she was 3, and Beverly was 5. And then there's a picture of me and my husband on our 40th anniversary. And this is a picture of my husband and me, Ed McMahon. We were invited to a big affair at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. And the night that we were invited, we were told to go to Ed's house. So we went to Ed's house, and within a few minutes, a limousine came. And we got into the limousine with Ed and his wife, and they drove us to the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. And when we got there, 2 officers opened the doors, and they escorted us to the upstairs to the entrance. And when we got there was somebody to escort us down to the very first 3 front rows in front of the stage. So when we got there, Ed McMahon had brought a lot of people from Hollywood. And so before he started his program, he got up on the stage and he said, I want you to meet my family. And they were he said, the people in the first 3 rows here are my family. So he said, I'd like my family to stand up and turn around and wave at the audience. So everybody got up, and Bill and I were sitting, and Ed turned, tonight you're McMahon. So we stood up and we're waving around, and I know the auditorium was absolutely full. And so there were a lot of Polish people up there, and they probably were saying, what is Helen doing down there waving? She's not Irish. Well, that's a little humor in my life. And Ed, the one who was on television, the first cousin to Ed McMahon, who was my husband's best friend. They grew up across the street from one another, and so they remained friends. This is a picture taken when the VFW, it used to be Town Hall, but now it's VFW, the Veterans. Well, when Bob Dole was running for president, Elizabeth Dole came and, to talk about her husband. Well, one of the women who graduated high school with me, she was from Pelham. Her name was Helen Rogers. She called me up and she said, would you go with me, because Elizabeth Dole is going to be there. So I met her there, and we went in, and we listened to Elizabeth talk, and there were a lot of local people there. And so now people go up and shake hands. Back then, Elizabeth Dole, once she stopped talking, she started walking around the hall. And Helen was over talking with somebody that she knew. And so Elizabeth came to me, and I told her, I said, it's too early to know whether your husband will still be, but I said, if he is, I plan to vote for him. And so she put her arm around me and said, she had a photographer, and she pointed to him, and she said, I want to take a picture of us. And I said, well, said, okay if my friend Helen comes in. I wouldn't be here if she hadn't called me. So there's Elizabeth Dole, Helen Rogers, and Helen's uncles, a couple Polish ladies. Elizabeth sent me this, and for years, up until I think 3 or 4 years ago, I faithfully got a Christmas card from her and Bob Dole. But I thought this was special. Now, many years ago, when I first started to date Bill Rogers, he bought a motorcycle. And at that time, I was going horseback riding with my friend Blanche on a Saturday. My mother did not like women to ride on motorcycles, not even men. She, for whatever reason, did not, because they made noise. She said, if you cross the street and somebody you hear, ooh. So one day, Bill said, he bought a motorcycle. He said, I'm coming over on a Saturday afternoon, and I said, well, don't come to the house. I'll meet you on Bridge Street, away from the house. So, at the given time, and that was the exact time that Blanche and I would be going horseback riding. So I got into my outfit, and my mother said, you going horseback riding? I said, well, I'm going riding. I didn't really lie, did I? Whatever. I got to the top of the street and got on the motorcycle, and we crossed the bridge into downtown Lowell. And when you had to make a right turn, you stayed way over to the right, because some cars were going left. And they didn't have lights there. There was a cop in the middle of the road, and he stopped us. So, who would be coming, the first one coming over? My Aunt Mary. So here I am and I'm doing it. So she crossed the street and she stopped. And she says, Helen, is that you? Oh, I said, oh, hi, Aunt Mary. And she said, I didn't know that you rode a motorcycle. Well, the cop says, go. So we went. Well, needless to say, after we were gone most of the afternoon, Bill brought me home and dropped me off on Bridge Street. I walked home, and when I got in the house, my mother said, tell me, what color was your horse? And I said, was Aunt Mary here? She said, she couldn't wait to get here. They tell me you were riding on an iron horse. She said, now, I don't approve of you riding a motorcycle, but if you're going to ride, I would just as soon know. I don't want other people coming and telling me what my children are doing. So, from then on, I rode on the motorcycle. We joined a Lowell Motorcycle Club. There were about 8 couples. Bill insisted that I should drive. So here I am with my joggers, the outfit that I bought to go horseback riding. And I did learn to drive the motorcycle. I was the only woman who drove the motorcycle. Years later, when he was a flight instructor, taught the boys to fly, he wanted me to go to Nashua to take flying lessons, because now he wanted me to. I took 2 flying lessons, and they were very expensive. And I said, Bill, where are we going to go that you can't fly? I said, this is ridiculous. So I only had 2 lessons. No traffic, it was very simple. were very few playing. Well, then, as time went on, we, oh yes, this is very recent. My son retired, and he comes on a Wednesday and Saturday to take me marketing, and we sit and visit, and he said, I remember going to Centerville and Lowell to visit your mother. He said, where was that house? And I said, it was on 3 Mapleview Avenue. So he wrote it down. And I said, you might be interested to know that when I was a senior in high school, in 1934, I worked 2 years, 7 days a week, went to school, didn't get home until 9 o'clock, now it's time to do homework. I was doing that because I planned to go into nursing. My father was only working a couple of days a week, and my mother. The mills had closed. In 1929, the stock market plunged. The mills closed. Most of the people lost their jobs. So if I was going to go into nurses training, I had to come up with the money for 3 years for my uniforms and for everything that I needed. So I worked 7 days a week. And when I came home, it was in May, my mother was sitting at the table, and she looked very sad. And I said, is something wrong? She said, yes. She said, the landlady was here about 3 weeks ago, and she said she's selling the house, and she would give us 3 weeks to buy it. She said, we went to the bank, the old 5-cent savings bank, and they said because so many people lost their housing, and the banks lost a lot of money, we need 1/3 of the cost in order to buy this house. And so I went up to my bedroom, I got my bank book, I brought it down, and my mother said, where did you ever get all that money? I said, Mom, I've been working 7 days a week, and I said, I've been saving the money to go into nurses training. But I said, it's more important to have a house for my family to live in. So I called Mrs. Parker up, it happened to be Saturday morning, and told her I'd be late coming to work. So I took my mother and my bank book, it was at the Lowell 5-cent savings bank, and so the girl escorted us into the office where the president of the bank was sitting, and I gave him my bank book, and he looked up at me and he said, I can't believe this. He said, your mother needed 1/3 of the cost of the house. He said, this is the exact amount. He said, it will be the down payment that's needed, but it'll wipe out your account. I said, it will give my family a home to live in. It was a 4-bedroom cottage. It was close to the church. It was close to walk downtown Lowell and to all the markets. There were markets in the village, all over the place. And so my son made a copy of every room and everything, and he brought it to me very recently, and I brought a picture of it. Today, I would need $75,000 to buy the house. That would be the 1/3. The cost of the house now is $27,126. It has 4 beds, 1 bar, and so 1/3 would be 75,000. Now, I have yet to find anybody in my category, or even younger, who were able to buy a house for their family when they were a senior in high school. So, you know, from a funny